Well, listen, good morning to all of you, and I find it amazing, and you probably do, that this is our last meeting. It's the end of the term, and it's great work. I heard someone say, oh my God, it happens quickly, and the pace of this place is amazing, and I'm going to offer some thoughts on ending, and I guess if there's anything I want you to take away from this talk, it's this. It's how a reflection on the school's history can perhaps help you put exams in perspective and give you the confidence that you're going to do well. And I guess as an English teacher and sort of amateur historian, I'm always interested in how history can shape us and history's lessons can be useful for us. And I begin here, and that is that tomorrow is December 7th, and Americans will mark the 75th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack, in which about 2,400 men and women lost their lives in the Japanese attack. And it was this attack that, as you know, led directly and immediately to our involvement in World War II. And in the days leading up to the attack in 1941, Taft boys, and of course it was an all-boys school at the time, were probably gathered just as normal and just like we are now in Bingham and hearing the headmaster talk. We were a much more formal school then. We had Vespers gatherings every night, or almost every night, which is essentially the school meeting in the evening. Most meals were formal sit-down meals, including in those days breakfast, if you believe it. My guess is that students on December 6th and 7th were a bit like you, tired, stressed about the upcoming exams, and when they had time and energy to do so, looking out, I think with some considerable confusion and anxiety on the world outside them. War, after all, had seized Europe. The German army had swept west, planes were bombing London, France had fallen. And headlines were ominous, to be sure. But most Americans at that moment wanted nothing to do with fighting, and little suggested that our entrance on the global stage was imminent. The thoughts of Taft students on December 6th were probably a lot like yours today. Am I prepared for that calculus exam? What will the essay question be in English? Will I freeze up in my Spanish oral, and so on? And indeed, we have a column written by then Headmaster Paul Cruikshank for the Alumni Bulletin, and it's dated simply December 1941. Who knows exactly when it was written? Perhaps the week earlier when he had a moment to breathe during Thanksgiving break. But when you read it, you're struck by how innocent it is of the war from which this nation is only days away. He did recognize that it was a trembling and unstable moment in our history, and he wrote, "These are days of confusion and anxiety. Never in our time has there been greater uncertainty about the future. We at Taft are conscious of the fact that the vigorous continuance of the school is dependent and will be dependent on the quality of service we contribute to the nation." So he was keenly aware that there was a powerful hinge-like moment in our history. And you feel the pressure on every student for him to speak like that to students of your age. You can sense the weight of obligation. But if we were being drawn into conflict, as some of you know from your history classes, it was not at that time with Japan, but with Germany. Recently, an American Navy ship, the Reuben James, had been sunk in the North Atlantic, and it took with it a Taft alumnus. Cruikshank spoke of how that sinking brought the conflict in Europe home. He added this: "The older boys have shown increasing concern about their role in the world conflict and a sincere desire to equip themselves for it. Already," he noted, "Taft alumni have responded to the country's need and have volunteered in impressive numbers. The well-established tradition of service is making itself keenly felt." So there you sense even then that nonut sibi motto, alumni already looking for ways to serve. And you sense a school, I think, of eager, committed, and passionate students, not unlike what I see in front of me. I'm sure they were tired of work, tired of the school, tired of teachers, tired of being tired. And after those few precious hours of free time on a Sunday, and of course free time is a phrase I always put in quotes at Taft, they would have walked to their dorms for study hall to prepare for review, to prepare for exams, and it was just another Sunday at Taft. And then they would wake to news that would rock the world. Alumni have shared stories with me of what happened on that day of Pearl Harbor, and their memories are etched as if in stone. One of them wrote me after 9/11, and I quote him in a letter, "I remember so well the feelings which swept Taft on December 7th, 1941, when as young men we could not believe what was taking place at Pearl Harbor. It was shortly after lunch when all on our floor were called into the apartment of Mr. Douglas, and we huddled near his radio, hardly knowing where Pearl Harbor was. A number of our class enlisted, and our lives would be forever changed." There's that sudden gathering of the winds of war, the flying debris of confusion and fear, the steady calm of a teacher, and the strength of a community in the eye of a tempest. President Roosevelt delivered his Day of Infamy speech the next day, December 8th, in the joint session of Congress. It is one of the great speeches in our presidential history. Cabinet members had advised him to give a lengthy address, a more comprehensive one. But he had trusted his instinct for brevity and compression and power, and so he spoke for only 7 minutes. His purpose was to make a clear case for the nation entering the war, to unite a traumatized nation, and to inspire resolve and courage. And no one was better equipped to do this. When you watch the opening address, and in a moment I'll show you the opening 2 minutes of it, you will hear him introduced by the Vice President. Sitting near him in a uniform, if you look closely, you will see his son James. James had escorted him into the room earlier. FDR, of course, could not walk. He had contacted polio in the early 1920s, and so most of his adult life he was paralyzed, irreversibly from the waist down. He could only stand with the help of others, and he could only walk a few steps, and that with a lurching gait. If you've seen the movie Pearl Harbor, you may recall the scene where actor Jon Voight, playing FDR, managed to stand in a meeting in front of his advisors and generals. It's the best moment in an otherwise forgettable movie. He staggers, he totters, he grimaces, he braces, and then he manages to stand. Many foreign leaders at that time did not know the extent of his condition, and the man on the street rarely knew. Newspaper photographers were told not to take pictures of him in his wheelchair, and amazingly, when we think of the press today, they almost always complied. So we can forget that this great president, who spoke with such power, who galvanized a nation, who inspired many, including Taft students, was profoundly disabled. So here's just David, if you could just show the opening 2 minutes of this address. This is to the joint session of Congress in which he's heard the news of Pearl Harbor.
Senators and representatives, I have the distinguished honor of presenting the President of the United States.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate and of the House of Representatives, yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at the solicitation of Japan, was still in conversation with its government and its emperor, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. In addition, American ships have been reported torpedoed on the high seas between San Francisco and Honolulu. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense, but always will our whole nation remember the character of the onslaught against us.
So as I said, he spoke for about another 4 minutes, and I think that in the list of great addresses by presidents, that certainly is seen by most as one of the most important. And you sense, even in that black and white footage, the weight of the moment. And I want you to cast yourself back to that moment and imagine being a Taft student and knowing that your world had changed so much. The papyrus editors wrote, and I quote from the papyrus that week, "On Sunday morning, we would have scoffed at the suggestion of an attack so fantastic as that which the Japanese launched on Hawaii. Sunday afternoon, there was peace. Monday morning, war." And you can imagine the chaos in the days afterwards. The papyrus reference, quote, "rumors going around that the Empire Building had crashed, New York City was bombed, that German planes were 10 minutes away." And you can imagine students trading in scraps of gossip and rumor, bartering, trying to learn more. Many boys, of course, did not even know where Pearl Harbor was, and they turned to teachers who, of course, had few answers. That evening, on December 7th, a Bach cantata played in Bingham as the school quietly filed in here, in this very space, to hear Headmaster Cruikshank, and retired 80-year-old Horace Dutton Taft addressed them, Taft leading them in the Lord's Prayer. One alumnus recalled how at sit-down dinner, Mr. Reardon assured them that the war would end quickly, that it was, and he quoted, "doubtful that any of them would see action." And I wonder whether this great history teacher, after whom our department award is named, really believed that. Again, he was sitting at a sit-down dinner table trying to give advice to a group of 17 and 18-year-olds. That night, 2 seniors ran away to enlist. They didn't ask permission. They didn't sign out, these young patriots. They just left. At 11 a.m. the next day, the school gathered in Bingham again to listen to Roosevelt's address on the radio. And so when they walked out to classes, and then when they moved into exams, that phrase, "a date that will live in infamy," went with them. Within a week, the PAP had noted, quote, "it is improbable that Taft will undergo an air raid in the near future, and yet we must ask boys to watch the night for invading planes." Imagine what they just wrote there. You think of some lower mid away from home for the first time, stricken in his bed with an eye towards a curtained window, wondering if planes would come over skies. The papyrus added that the senior class had, quote, "almost to a man volunteered to take part in plane spotting activities on the football field." Incredible, it sounds, and yet it wasn't. And a week later, a student wrote in an editorial, wrote simply, "Each boy in this school, whether he relishes the idea or not, is sooner or later going to be called into service." So it was in this setting, with the air this thick with fervor and confusion, with so many unanswerable questions, with the prospect for seniors not of college but of military service and combat, that the school went into exams. These were the young people that would become known by many as the greatest generation. Without complaint, they went to work. And some of them perished in the war, and their names are in that memorial in Lincoln Lobby. So we do well, and I know this sounds heavy-handed, and it's not meant to, but we do well to keep exams in perspective. Like so many challenges you'll face in life, a graduate school exam, a job interview, a presentation to a demanding boss, you need to develop the ability to face stress, to perform under pressure, to demonstrate what you know. Exam week is not some strange artificial exercise never again to be repeated. It is not some kind of torture that faculty create. It's practice. It's rehearsal. So what you learn here, I hope you'll be able to take with you long after you graduate. So I'll close by just offering some advice and saying the obvious. Think of what those boys were facing when they went into exams. Keep some perspective, and take from that story the confidence that you can excel. So some practical advice. Next slide, David, if you could. I think about this a lot when we talk, my advisees and I talk often about SGDs. You need to be doing this at all times at Taft, but particularly the next 10 days. Make small, good decisions, because your goal is to have high energy, high health, high achievement, and high happiness. And you cannot do that unless you make good, small decisions about when to eat, when to sleep, when to study, how to exercise. You cannot have those 4 things if you stay up till 3 in the morning. You cannot have them if you use drugs or alcohol and you're hungover for an exam or studying. You can't have this if you stay up, do a group study session that is wasteful in time, and you end up where things went. So you have to be really calculated, I think, and just make small, good decisions over the next 10 days, because this is what you want to do. You want to have high energy, you want to have high health, right? You want to achieve at a high level, and you want to have high happiness. So make small, good decisions. Remember, each decision itself is not that significant, but collectively, what do I eat? What time am I going to wake up? What time will I go to bed? How will I organize my room? All of those small good decisions, each of which is pretty easy to make, can have a huge difference. So next slide. This is the one thing you control. It's about attitude, I think. Yeah, sure, the week is going to be hard, but you've got lots of free time, more free time than you ever have at Taft, frankly. You're going to be fine, and have a good attitude. Try to have those three things. Be positive, be confident, and be calm. You can control your attitude. When you find yourself sliding into fatigue or despair or whining, catch yourself, right? Catch yourself with others. Don't get in a group of people where you spin into that kind of negativity that we often do. So try to control your attitude and say, this is something I can actually do something about. I can control the attitude I have going into these exams. Next. This is a really critical piece. I know that Dr. Russell Jacobs talks about this a lot. You need to find an optimum stress level for yourself. So if we think of ourselves as, if you think of a tachometer in a car that measures the RPMs, all of you have to find the optimum stress level. If your needle is at 0 or 1, that's clearly not feeling enough stress. You should feel some stress whether you're going into going to the first night of the play, a big game, an exam, or what have you. So you need to have a certain amount of stress, and it's healthy. It's productive to have stress. Like anybody, I have a certain amount of stress when I come up and talk, and I hope it's an optimum level. But if you get into the red zone, if you get into the 8,000 and 10,000, that's when the stress level is not optimal, and it can actually be destructive. Coaches are often talking about that with players. How do we try to get to an optimal stress level? So I would encourage you to think about, what is your optimal stress level? How can you make yourself feel a level of stress which is productive and inspiring and motivating, but not debilitating? So think about that for yourself. Where do you want your needle to be with your stress level? Next. Don't be annoying, okay? Really, I mean, no names, but don't you know, either here or elsewhere, that student who's always whining about how much they work, and frankly, it's just annoying, and it's maybe only exceeded in annoying by the one who brags. And that's the one who says, oh, I can't believe I stayed up till 3 in the morning. Yeah, well, I stayed up till 4, right? First of all, it's probably not true, and it's just annoying for other people. So stop bragging, stop whining, and don't be the one who runs around like crazy in the dormitory. Again, that's really annoying for other people, the person who's running down and they're gathering materials and they're freaking out all over the place, right? So remember, your attitude and your approach actually affects other people, and we all know those people, right? You've met them. I had a roommate in college who was one of the brag ones. And you just felt like you had to outdo him with another story about how hard he worked. And the problem with the bragging is the implication is, I'm the only one working on the campus, right? So don't be annoying. Next. Take care of your body. It's really important. Take care of your body because, there's a lot of evidence that tells us that your physical, medical condition will really affect how well you do. So make really good, good decisions so you have peak performance. Think about sleep and sleep hygiene. By sleep hygiene, I mean the habits that let you fall asleep well and get to sleep quickly. You don't want to be watching a really exciting movie as a break at 11 o'clock because you're going to be amped up, you're excited. You don't want to be getting into a bad sleep cycle where you take that big, huge nap from 1 to 4, and now your sleep cycle is way out of whack. So think about how at night you dial down. You get your room quiet, you turn the lights down, you maybe read something relaxing, you put the screen away, you put your phone away. You do everything you can to develop what's called sleep hygiene, good sleep habits, so that you're not lying there at 1 in the morning still awake. Try to slow things down. You'll sense that in the dormitory. Faculty are going to be trying to help you with that. Everybody slow down, quiet down, develop the habits that let you get a good night's sleep. Do not get into that bad sleep cycle with the mega nap, which leads to being up late. You should get exercise. There's so much free time during exam week. Take a walk, go up to the gym, do an aerobic session, do stretch, go for a jog, what have you. And think carefully, as always, about how you eat. If you have an exam in the morning, you absolutely need to wake up in time. You absolutely should get a good breakfast, not a bowl of, Fruit Loops. Okay, get something good for you. Okay, so take care of your body. Next, take care of your soul. Take care of your psyche. Take care of your heart. Take care of that inner part of us, whatever name you give it. Meditating has shown to have really good effects. Yoga can be deeply relaxing. Stretching even just stretching, taking a break from studying at night, stretching in your room or in the hallway. Go to church if you worship or temple, worship on Sunday, right? Take delight in the friendships. You get done with an exam or you have time, have fun with your friends. Sit down at a table, relax. Just enjoy the love you have for each other and the support you have for each other. Do the same with family. Stay connected. Reach out. Don't feel alone. So in the same way you want to take care of your body, take care of that inner part of us, which we want to be whole as well. Next. Have a study strategy. You definitely want to organize early. I would encourage you over the next 2 days to begin organizing material, pulling books together, note cards, and so on. And a critical piece is know what you don't know. Psychologists call this metacognition, that is reflecting on your own thinking about thinking. Try to figure out what you don't know, and then see teachers sooner rather than later. And I would be very careful about group study. In certain circumstances, it can be incredibly helpful. In some, it can be the worst thing possible. It can be a total time waste, and it can just serve to raise your anxiety. Be really careful about whether you're going to do group study. I'm not discouraging it. It can be effective. I do think the effectiveness goes down pretty much with every person you add to the group. So be very cautious about doing that. Okay? And next, remember this date. So let me close again where I began, which is saying I wanted you to walk away with two things: some perspective about the exams, and also the confidence that you can do well. Let's return to what Cruikshank wrote in that column. And he could have been speaking for me right here. This is what he wrote, again, in that column that appeared in early December. We believe we have an excellent student body. A serious attitude towards their studies and their school responsibilities seems to be characteristic of the school as a whole. The enthusiasm and morale appear to be our best. The leadership of the senior class and the monitors calls for strong commendation. We confidently anticipate a splendid year in all respect. I'm struck by how 75 years ago he wrote exactly what I'm thinking today. Exactly. On every account, he was right in describing his school then and in me looking out on you today. That this is an excellent student body, serious about your work and your responsibilities. I think the morale is high even among these challenges, and you've been led by in a remarkable fashion by this senior class. I think it's one of the finest I've seen, and by the monitors. You have so much to be proud of, so much. Those are not empty words. I feel that deeply about this fall, and I think I'm just echoing what Cruikshank said on that moment in history when he looked out on all of you. So best of luck in these last few days. I know you will do well. You should feel confident, and I look forward to seeing you in these closing days before you go off to break. Thank you.